Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we are here today to talk about part five of The Darkness That Comes Before. We've been talking each part every week, almost. So we have come to the end, part five, the final part. So I'm here today with Katerina and Daniel. So, Katerina, you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Katerina, and I've been rereading The Darkness That Comes Before with these two guys, and I'm super excited that we're finally at the end and we can talk some spoilers.
Nice.
And I am also rereading The Darkness That Comes Before for maybe the third time now. And it's been fun to have some people to talk about it with.
Yeah, coming every week to talk about the book has definitely helped me a lot. It's changed my reading habits a lot. Doing this, so it's been a lot of fun. So thanks to both of you for doing this. Hopefully, we can continue the rest of the series. So,
Mm.
part five, the Holy War.
Yeah, I mean, I've also it's been like a great experience for me as well because like having the time to being able to take the time to go slowly through each of these parts
Mm.
and to really like dissect the plot and then the character dynamics and the psychology like it's definitely improved my experience even reading this book, like even the parts that I didn't remember enjoying as much in my last read I thought were just top of the game. So I loved reading this book, reading through this book again. It's been great.
And that's true. I think maybe I'll give an example of something that you can catch through the book, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you might not catch. So Steve might not know. Katarina knows. She alluded to it a couple parts ago.
Hmm. Maybe I know what you're talking about.
There's been a couple of times when both of you have kind of looked at each other and smiled and stopped yourselves, and I thought, okay, this is gonna happen. This gonna be reminded of this part later. So, yeah, you guys you've done a really good job not spoiling anything. So, kudos for that because it must be hard to remember once you get past so many books. It's hard to remember what happened in which book. So,
Yeah, I think doing this
Katarina
part by
mentioned
part. Yeah, go ahead.
Katarina mentions Skios differently for sure when she talked about him, and now we know why she mentioned Skios' name strangely.
Did I? Oh man, I
Well,
was
you
trying
can't
to
tell
be very.
unless you're. Yeah, I know you were. You did well. I don't think Steve noticed anything.
I didn't notice.
I, I didn't bring up the part where Sirius is walking up the stairs and Skios is like keeping up with him, even like going faster than him, even though he's just like hunched old man. And Sirius wanted to like wear him out to prove a point, and he just never could because
Yeah,
Skios
I
is not
think
a
yeah.
hunched old man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun part to read. I think it was Compass, right? I don't think it was. I think it was Compass rather than Sirius. But yeah, it's a
Oh,
fun part to read when you know that Skios is not who he seems to be.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then all of his whispering in his ear the whole time becomes different because it's for the consult. Or I guess most of the Holy War still thinks it's the Shishorim, but some of them know it's the consult. I think Akamian does, and I think Confis does, at least.
Well, he seems uncertain. But yeah, I don't think it's clear in this book when exactly Chaos was replaced by the Skin Spy. There definitely seems to be a divergence or yeah, like a divergence between Zarius and Chaos after Zarius meets up with the Kisharim, which is another thing I want to talk about later. Is that until then, like it seems that Scale's been just with like that Zara's been doing everything that Scales told him to. But after Sirius meets with the Kisharim and they make the deal that they will basically sacrifice the Vulgar Holy War. Um, Scales somehow starts to sabotage a lot of what Sirius is doing, and it seems like he's also trying to pit Sirius against Conphis and sort of make Conphis, um, I don't know, like how would you describe it? Like do something that will make Sirius too scared or too upset with Proas that he will just get rid of him. So it's not really clear when exactly Scales gets replaced. But I wonder if that was like somewhere between those two parts, or if that happened before that.
I should go back and read the couple conversations with them. Hillis usually like talks about it. I remember, or I mean, Baker usually talks about it. So I remember at one point it talking about like one of the I think the Emperor looks at Skios and just notices his skin's weird, like he's not sweating at all, and his skin just looked strange. So at that
Yeah.
point, Skios was already weird. I don't remember when that was. It was before the walking up the stairs scene.
Yeah, I think we can probably all agree that when like Confus is chasing him up the stairs, like that's he's for sure been already replaced by a skin spy.
Yeah, that's not an old man anymore.
Yeah. But I think like you kind of like maybe we should give Sirius kudos for like discovering the first skin spy in the Holy War. Like he's always gets the reputation of being like extremely paranoid, but the two people he suspects of betraying him are Scales and Confess, and in reality, like they both that's what they at least consider, if not outright do it. So um, give Sirius some slack. Actually like reading through this book now, like he's such a fun character to read. Like I mean, he's hilarious. He's very paranoid, but sometimes he's very smart without necessarily intending to be.
What was that purposeful of Kellis or an accident of Kellis that Xerius noticed him looking at Skios?
Is anything an accident with Callus, though?
There's a moment like in this part it talks about like the conquering of him trying to like take control of the Holy War and how there's just too many variables for him to walk through the probability to find the path. So he is limited, but a little bit more information like will narrow the possibilities, and that's what he's looking for.
Yeah, I think I mostly understood it as being an accident or not something that Kellis intended. Because up until that point, he didn't know that skin spies were a thing, and I don't think he intended for Scales to get captured by the Emperor. So I think it was. I thought it was an accident, but who knows?
So he can make accidents. There are there are unknowns on this conditioned ground he tries to walk. Maybe. He like debates whether Skios is like sent by his father. I mean, calculates his heart rate and all of his bodily functions and realizes that his face is like just a shell.
I'm
And I
glad that he
think
has limits, though.
when it describes it as like fingers that come apart and like the palm is like the inside of the head. So it's like
Yeah,
oh,
when his face opens up and he like wraps the claws around the
tentacles around.
Kamian's head, and he's basically trying to bite his head off. That was pretty insane.
That was great. Yeah.
Well, I guess we should start with how the chapter starts about Proteus and the
Mhm.
whole political intrigue game still getting played.
Yeah, I will say that the way part four ends, and then part 5 it was a little weird the way part 4 left off because you're a little confused, and then so it was a little kind of a change of pace with part 5.
Part 4 ends with them getting caught. Is that the
Hmm.
last thing that
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Part and part 5 starts with Sabin, or I mean, with Proteus not being able to control Sabin and needing more food to feed all of these poor people that he's now in charge of, and him still having to find a way to avoid the indenture. Just him going through a lot of stuff and
Yeah.
feeling like he's losing.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
also like he's also pretty upset about the fact that he constantly has to make compromises between like his faith and the reality of the holy war. Like we know he's one of the most pious people who joined this endeavor, but as the leader of at least some of the noblemen, he's constantly have to sacrifice his principles essentially for the greater good, I guess. Well, that's at least that's how he puts it. um so he like yeah he allows the Inrithi that joined the holy war to sack the Inrithi Nansur villages to get food that the emperor is refusing to provide them with. Which also like that's one of the things that puzzles me about the plot of this book, that like how like because there are all these people coming from all these different kingdoms, like thousands and thousands of people, like how do they expect the emperor to just give food to all of them? Like I mean he has his own people to feed, and now he's supposed to be feeding this like 100,000 people army. um I don't know if that's like based in history or if that's just leap of like faith that we have to make, but I do find it a bit unrealistic. Like, where is all this food coming from? Like, are the nuns who are staying behind just going to starve? Is that what's going to happen?
I think it might have something to do with that they've stored up a lot of food over the past few years because they've been in like relative peace. So they probably will all starve a little, but there will be a lot less people to feed as the Holy War goes on. And feeding and controlling an entire army becomes like a theme as we go on, kind of. But in history, there's times where, like, the religious power had to, like, lay down the law over the king for the religious reasons, because really, like, whoever's in charge of the religion is in charge of, like, the people's hearts, kind of. So that's why, in the end, Confis goes on this holy war, even though they have no reason to send him anymore, except for the hope that he can somehow take control. Because they lose. They lose this whole battle of wits, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll
And
get there.
I found this quote. It's kind of what you were talking about, and it's Akamian thinking about Proteus, and he thinks he's so changed. What happened to him? But even as he asked this, Akamian recognized the answer. Proteus suffered as all men of higher purpose must. The endless exchange of principles for advantages. No triumph without remorse. No respite without siege. Compromise after anxious compromise until one's entire life felt defeat. It was malady mandate schoolmen knew well.
Yeah, I
So
did write down that quote as well.
Oh, did you?
he's like a he's like a cup that has to keep emptying himself into all the other cups around him to keep the scales tipped in his favor as they all like drain out. So he has to keep giving concessions and concessions. And then that becomes a big point whether having a Sylvendi or having the Emperor's nephew is more of a concession to their god. Once we get to the argument at the end, the big debate. But I think it's Cinemus's cousin that was the one that ended up finding Nair and Kellis, and so like brings them to Proeus's tent instead of them getting taken by the Emperor, and probably Kellis or Nair would have became another Sylvendi slave to the Emperor.
Yeah, I think that's the cliffhanger you were referring to, Steve. That like at the end of part 4, we don't know exactly what is going to happen to Callus and your what the Conrians who captured them, what they're going to do with them. If they're just going to bring them in front of the Emperor, or if there's some other purpose that they intend for them. And yeah, we find out here that Callus, not Callus, Proas has this idea to essentially replace Comphis with Nior, which is preposterous in itself. Considering the history that the two of them have, well, that at least Comphis is not really aware of, but Nior certainly is.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Nair is an unlikely leader of the Holy War since he like believes in a holy other god. And it like talks about his philosophy, and he thinks that all these games they play, like Shanann or whatever it's called, is just a womanish game. Anything they do is just like purposeless and womanish to him. But then to his own tribe, he's like the womanish one because he got inflicted with the Dunyan's disease of contradiction, I guess, second guessing. He's really good at second guessing. Like, oh, he's leading me right where he wants me to go. I'm just gonna refute everything he says, which is how he's more powerful than the Dunyan's probing. I don't know what it's called when the Dunyan do things.
Kind of wondered if that's a good thing that he's detached and he doesn't have that same mentality. He's just making decisions based on what's best and doesn't have any, I guess, a stake, or he doesn't have any emotion. He's just, wonder if that's a better leader for something like this.
Are you talking about Nior?
Mm-hmm.
Kellis.
I don't know that I would describe Nior as someone not having emotion.
Well,
I mean, he may be
as far as the Holy War, I guess. I mean, does have a stake in it? Yeah.
Gotcha.
He could just as easily kill the Inrithi or the Phantom. They're both just kind of heathens in his eyes. Yeah. Though I think the Phantom and him worship the same god.
Sort of, maybe. I don't think we don't really learn much about the Phantom in this book, except for the fact that they do. They have the religion is monotheistic, and they worship just one single god. But I don't even know. Like, I wonder if putting Nior in charge or in command of the Holy War, like if that's even, like if Proas actually needs him to be in charge, or if he actually needs him as his general. Like, I wonder to what extent he's just sort of a like a token, like something that he can use to get rid of the need for Comphis. like to have like a counter argument against the emperor, who's trying to like convince them that they cannot win against the Phantom unless they have Confess. So I wonder like to what extent that like Nior is just an excuse, or it's just something they want that Proyas will use in that argument. But like once they march out, like are they actually going to need Nior, or like? Because I mean, they'll have a lot of great noblemen, potentially some generals in the Holy War. Like, it's really none of them going to be capable to command the army against the Phantom. I wonder.
Nair seems to like have thought about this, his uselessness as we go on. He was like thinking maybe he would be the general, and he's like, no, I'll only ever be an advisor at most. But you got to remember that Kellis let him live and said that he needed him to teach him war. And there's one part through Kellis's vision where he says that he knows Nair is smart, like he understands his intellect is deep when it comes to war. This book, you get quite a few chapters through Kellis's eyes where maybe later on you don't. Sometimes things become too abstract to be like seen that closely.
Yeah, I like the part during the audience where it's through Kellis's POV, and he's essentially like evaluating all the different lords that gather in the room. And he's basically like he's like deciphering their like reason for why they joined the Holy War, and like what their weak spots would be and how he could control them. That was pretty neat.
There was a part in that where, like, after he asks Proteus about all these people, Nair looks at him and says, "Do you feast, Dunyan? Grow fat on faces?" That part was intense. Like, Kellis is eating up all these people's desires and ambitions just to see how to cook them up.
And we do learn a lot about Kellis in this part too, about kind of how he was, his past experiences and things. So it felt like it focuses a lot on Kellis, which is a character that wanted to learn more about the whole time, but finally get more insight into him.
Yeah, we get the whole sequence with him remembering back to when he was a small kid, and he first encountered or like mastered the darkness that comes before. When he, I don't even know how to describe it. Like when he got it was into sort of like a trance. Is that how you would describe it?
Like a deep meditation of some sort.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was like a meditation. Now, I can't be the only one who thought about repeating that phrase. See what happens, right?
Yeah, I think I lack the concentration or the stamina.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it for 7 days either. It's a long meditation.
It's a big commitment.
Then you got to have someone standing there to slap you when he realizes you're not thinking that, and nobody can see what you're thinking currently, except for the Dunyan. Because Kellis seems to be able to say what Serway thinks before Serway thinks. So
yeah, that was a pretty interesting revelation. When he's like we already know that they sort of communicated, but then like seeing him be able to read her thoughts as she's thinking them just from looking at her face, it's pretty it's pretty stunning.
yeah, those few brief glimpses you get, like when Kellis is analyzing Skios, or when he like wonders what men would think if they saw what he saw, and talks about how he sees the 42 muscles behind people's faces instead of their actual faces, like how deeply that is. And there's more on that eventually. This is just one teaching of Kellis. I think what it says when he was 11 when he did that meditation.
I
And then they
don't remember the exact age.
and then they throw the knife at the end, and it's, what did it say? It said something intense, like it wasn't even Kellis. Well, it says the place where Kellis once existed extended his palm and caught the knife. The place where Kellis once existed. And then the way it went, like, he, he started. I'm sorry. He started like reciting the words, and all of these thoughts stemming from his passion started coming in, trying to like take over his repetition of the words. He just had to keep fighting and fighting against his own passions, whatever like was coming before. And then after the first day, and the pragma yelled at him because he like broke focus for a second, and he regained focus. He just kept going and going. And on the fourth day, I think he like soiled himself and just thought he was a stone, because he was getting like deeper into, I guess as you call it, a trance. And then by the seventh day, there was no interference like there was the first day. All the interference was gone. And so he mastered passion, I guess is how it put it.
Yeah, but then do you think him grabbing the knife, was it a conscious decision that he made, or is that like a reflex that comes from the dark? That's not that's the part I wasn't clear on. Like,
I
was
kind
it
of took it as a reflex, or like a not conscious. But what do you think, Jen?
So like, yeah, it was like a reflex to make him realize that he was still himself. Because kind of like when he was first got out and he stared at this twig for, I forgot how many days it was, but just days and days, he got like lost in some kind of weird trance with all the new possibilities and probabilities. It was like,
Yeah, Caleb staring at twigs is one of the more memorable passages from the prologue.
yeah, it's crazy. A super intellect can get stumped by something smaller than a stump. Made of the same thing.
But yeah, coming back to the emperor and Neor and the gathering of the nobles, I think like maybe part of the reason why Proyas is sort of proposes to appoint Neor as the general is that like he basically calls the bluff that the Ichires have played, because like I think he kind of anticipates that even if they refuse to sign the indenture, like in the end, Zarius will still send Confis with them, because he probably wants to have a stake in the Holy War, and like the Holy War will be marching through the Nensurium anyway. So I think that might be also part of Proyas's reasoning. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I feel like he thinks the whole time that if the Shrai had just told him that it had happened, that it would happen. Because really, the Emperor can't like deny the Shrai, but maybe he just doesn't know all of the behind the scenes workings of them.
But yeah, so in the end, Callus decides to intervene because he realizes that maybe having Conphus at the helm of the Holy War wouldn't be such a great idea, um, because he's pretty unscrupulous and doesn't necessarily have the best in interest of the Holy War in mind. So he decides to intervene and basically convinces the lords that it's okay, or it's better it's better to choose the Skilvendi over the Nens or Emperor, which I think is outrageous. But somehow they buy it.
Yeah, and at the same time, Kellis is telling Nair that after Moengus has been in the mountains for among men for 30 years, that he's got to be way more powerful and he needs more than the Gnosis to defeat him. He needs a nation.
And he also
And
needs magic or
the,
sorcery.
the Gnosis, and seems like this Sylvendi sees him talking to the Mandate and tells him that the Mandate are not the school that's ever going to give their sorcery away. But Kellis already has Akamian as his teacher, so
Yeah, and Kellis can be very convincing. Like he already basically has a Kamian wrapped around his finger. Um,
and everyone
and
except the people that wear the thing over their face, which were the Imperial Psych. Are they the ones that wore porcelain masks? I think.
I think that's the A09.
Scarlet's.
Yeah, the Scarlet Spires, or yeah.
They don't know it, but that helps them against Kellis, since part of his
Uh,
ability is to read the faces.
True. I haven't thought of that, but that's yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He
That's
can
why
really read their faces.
Skios was completely unreadable, and so he knew he was like an abomination, and he wondered if it was one of his dad's tricks.
Yeah, and we sort of get it gets insinuated, or like Kellis suggests to Neor that it's very likely that Moangus is Kisharim.
Because he said in a dream, so it had to be magic. Even Nair realizes that.
And he sent them from Shaima, or at least he called Callus to Shaima, which is the seat of the Kisharim. Um, so it seems likely to be true. And one thing that happened in part two that I try not to bring too much attention to when we read through it. But if you go back to the scene in part two, there is a meeting between Zarius and a Kisharim, and the Kisharim is described as being pale and having scars like a Sylvendi. Um,
Named
so it makes
Malahat.
you, yeah, and his name's like Malahat or something. Like it starts with an M, so it makes you wonder. It makes you
And
wonder,
then
like how many Kisharim are there which are pale, like fair skinned, and have scars like swazons on their hands.
and then to a little bit later, Nair talks about how he helped Moengus escape by giving him some dye and said that Moengus had carved swazons all across his arms in order to act like a Sylvendi to get off the step. So he's like looks like Kellis, but he's got a whole bunch of swazons all across his arms. And then there's some powerful mage named Malahat that they say could be even more powerful than the most powerful Sishwarim, but he's not like of their ascendant, so he can't be the leader. He's from somewhere else. They can't ever have an outsider lead him, but he's still more powerful. This weird one with a bunch of swazons on his arms.
Coincidence?
I don't think so. But,
Nair realizes he's kind of doing what the Sylvendi did at the Battle of Kyuth. He's just rushing at Moingus without thinking at all about how powerful he's become and about how he has no chance to fight him one-on-one. It's like the idea that he's charging it, not that it's like the actual thing, once he gets to it, will still destroy him. So he's having to rethink his strategy now. Maybe he needs Kellis, and maybe he needs this whole nation, like Kellis says.
Well, it's, I think maybe part of like Nior not really thinking about it is that, I don't know, he just gets so obsessed with the idea that getting to Moangus will solve all of his life's problems, that maybe thinking too much about how he's going, like what he's going to do once he's there, or like how he's going to kill Moangus. It's like if he starts questioning that, that might make him more or less resolved, let's say, to actually carry on through with it. Like maybe thinking too much about like how solid his plan is or how not solid it is would make him realize that this whole adventure has been a really bad idea. And somehow like now he's find himself in the middle of the like Inrithi civilization, which is like the one of his arch enemies in the entire world. And somehow he's become their general who's supposed to lead them against another nation that he also does not care about. So
Using a son he hates to get the dad he hates, with a nation he hates to kill the other nation he hates.
Yeah, he did seem a lot like a fish out of water in that section. Like he, you never really know what he was going to do or what he was going to say. At least I wasn't sure how he'd react to, having to almost, like justify why he should be there and kind of how he fit in the whole thing. So that was that thought that was a fun section there where he was, they were trying to, make a case for him to be that person instead of Confus.
yeah, I thought he actually showed a lot of restraint, considering like how violent and maybe unpredictable we've seen him to be in the previous chapters. I thought he handled this up pretty well when he was talking to the Emperor. He was sort of trying to explain to him like why. Well, I mean, it was kind of obvious to him that they were trying to provoke him and to make him, to sort of discredit him in front of all the other Inrithi lords. I thought he handled this pretty well. Basically explaining to them that he doesn't care about Zinnerid, the former king of tribes, how he does not consider him kin anymore because he's been sort of unmanned or blinded, and I don't know what other horrible things they did to that poor guy. I thought that was pretty interesting explanation of like the differences between the cultures and like how the Skilvendi view their kinship with the other with other Skilvendi, and how that may differ from the way that Inrithi think of their fellow man.
And that was a lot of this part was a lot of that, just kind of trying to prove, we're trying to get Nair into that position, but it was fun seeing all these different characters we've been following come together and interact.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a convergence. Like if you've been wondering, or like if you've been Yeah, if you've been a bit confused or weren't sure like why we've been following all these different threats and all these different characters throughout the book, now they finally come together. And I think because we saw them build up individually and separately, and now like they finally come together, and you see them talking to each other, and you get their reactions to one another. Like that's it's very rewarding, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not like Malazan. It doesn't take a few books for the convergence, at least. You get to converge immediately, mostly immediately. It was a very slow going book, and not a lot happened, though. I noticed. By the end of it, really, it just is like the convergence of the men of the Holy War. I guess the trilogy is the Holy War itself. That's why the next book is considered the most action packed, because politics is slow.
Well, that's the part I love. I didn't I don't I would disagree with this with the statement that nothing happened in this book. I think a lot of happened, especially in terms of politics. There was a lot of politicking, lot of conspiring and plans not going the way that people anticipate them, and then people having to adjust their plans to different circumstances. I mean, it's like 600 pages. Something had to happen, right?
I think as far as like things happening, I think it wasn't as much as other books, but I think a lot of it was setting up, like identifying parts of the world and different factions and people and history. So in that case, when you look back on it, there was a lot in the first book that may not have happened story wise, but there was a lot of build up. Like there's a lot of like the different religions and the holy war and all this other stuff. So and it's packed full of stuff. Just lots to because we were able to talk for 6 hours for 5 hours about it. So
Right.
Yeah, there was the Battle of Cuse. There was the Vulgar Holy War, which were two pretty big battles. There was three or four battles of just intellect, which are I guess, all the kings and all the powerful people vying for power, which I consider those a battle too. I didn't not like this book, but I was imagining it as a first time reader. And I guess I haven't read a lot of fantasy recently, so I don't have a lot to compare it with. I have like the Game of Thrones, uh, Anna Smith Sparks' first book, and all of Scott Lynch's books, I think I read. Those are really the only fantasy I've read recently. So I took a pretty decent break from reading. And comparing them, like their Anna Smith Sparks book, not a whole lot happened to the first book. Kind of just converging, one big battle or two, three, maybe.
yeah, I think especially in a trilogy in fantasy, I think the first book is typically used for like world building or kind of getting a feel for the world that's being lived in and the characters and the histories, and then usually the second and third book is when it starts to kind of um, you know feels like more feel like more happens. But I have heard some I have seen some reviews about this book about the first book in this series that nothing happened, like absolutely nothing happened. I don't know if I don't know. I think you know um, I think it all depends too on just the type of book that you're used to reading, because a book like Malice, it's like action packed, but I was bored the whole time because it was just battle after battle after battle. So it just kind of depends on the speed that you're looking for too. Is what you're used to. I think is a big part of it. But I think I'm glad that the second book is available to us because I would be really impatiently waiting for the for the second book if it wasn't already available. So that'd be a tough way to wait on the second book.
Yeah, I think it helps if you think of the trilogy as like essentially one book split into three parts, which means that the first book really is just the setup, and then the second and third book are sort of the like the main plot, and then the climax um and ending of that like one book that is Prince of Nothing. And like I do agree with you, like yes, there's a lot of exposition, there's a lot of world building done in the first book, especially like the first part, the prologue, and the first part with the comment is very exposition heavy. But like I'm someone who loves world building, and also I love politics in fantasy. So for me this is essentially the perfect book. Like it doesn't really get better.
Yeah, and our Scott Baker's philosophy degree that he intertwines into all of like the writing. So every like few paragraphs, there's a sentence that you can just sit back and reflect on your whole life and how that sentence applies before you move on in the book. There's lots of really heavy wording, especially because these people they live in like a really heavy world. So they're experiencing this, and their experiences are changing, and it allows you to like use these people in this fantasy world as an example of things in your own life through the philosophies that R. Scott Baker's like playing with as we walk on his conditioned ground. Since these are his books, this is his conditioned ground.
Yeah, there are some, like I said, there's even some just sentences you can read over and over again and dissect. I think my favorite part of the whole book might have been the prologue because I think I can go back now and reread the prologue and I'll have a whole totally different view of it. There's just so much in that prologue, so much to, and there may even be more to it when we continue. Both of you know better than I would, but is there? Well, I don't. I haven't asked, but I'm guessing that there's more in the prologue that will come that will make more sense or that will view differently later in the series. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I've read four and a half of these books, and there are still things in the prologue that I don't really have a reference for. So I can only imagine that going back to it after you finish the entire series would be very rewarding, and we would definitely see a lot of things make much more sense, or maybe see them through a different lens.
Maybe that no man battle changes a lot if you've read the whole entire books.
Yeah, we haven't really. I don't even know if we learn anything about the non-man in this book. I don't recall anything apart from the prologue. I don't think we ever go back to them.
No,
Maybe a comment mentions them. I don't know.
yeah, I don't even know if he's had them in his dreams yet. It's mostly been him fighting the Sylvendi.
Yeah, which
Um,
is, I mean, that the dynamic also is interesting between Nayor and Akamian. With I mean, we know that the Ninsur hate the Skilvendi, but I think it might be even more intense for Akamian, who's basically like he knows the Skilvendi through the dreams he has every night, and like he remembers them as the people that helped bring about the first apocalypse. So he's not very happy to see Neor.
and
Uh,
now he has like a Sylvendi, an Anasarimber, and the consult all like dangled in front of him, which are all like these far off dreams that he used to have. There's a part in it where they were like talking about seeing the Sylvendi, and he's like, I remember a dream where they fought, and he's like, the battle was right here, and then he was like, oh yeah, this was called, I forgot what he called it. It was like a different town 1,000 years ago, just a small town. but Camian's like lived through that. So how steep history is in these books. The capital used to be some little baby town 1,000 years ago, and the Camians like walked both.
Yeah, but definitely there are a lot of warning signs with the consult making an appearance after 300 years. The Anasarim returning, which is supposedly signal the end of the world again. And then the Skelendi. It doesn't seem to bode well for Akamian and everyone in 3Cs, I guess.
I've tried to not read I made the mistake of reading the synopsis on one of the books in the second the second series, but I try to stay away from even looking at the titles and things because I think it'll give some things away. But in terms of how much happens, just thinking about that is I think looking back on it on the first book, I think a lot of character work is done too because we know a lot about the characters. I think we've talked a lot of, even after the first part, we talked a lot about characters and kind of what makes them tick and what their traits and things like that. So in that sense, I think a lot of time is spent on characters too.
Yeah, I know their ambitions more than I knew most other characters in other books. I think what drives their souls, just because I think it's just R. Scott Baker's prose and the way he fleshes things out is just too good. He just has too much ability at it that it would take a lot more pages for other authors to flesh out these characters as well as he did in this one book.
Because I feel like I know these characters after one book better than I know a lot of characters after a trilogy.
Yeah, I think the way he writes characters it's very compelling, but also it's a big focus of the books themselves. He does take his time to explain who these characters are and where they're coming from and how they perceive the world and how they perceive themselves or their role in the world. So I think it's a big part of his writing for sure. And it's one of the things I love about this series so much.
Yeah, they all have their different, really deep problems, and they're all contemplating them in their own ways, based off what they see in each other. I guess, kind of. Just as we're all just reflections of each other in the end. Maybe we don't control the movements of our own soul. Maybe someone can see before and move them, or maybe it's too deep to see.
Speaking of which, I think we should maybe talk a little bit about Esmenet and Serway. I don't think we have really touched on them in this sport yet, but especially as
she finds another skin spy, probably. And he's a tattooed officer of the Eothic Guard.
Oh, you think he's a skin spy? I didn't consider that option.
Neither.
I just assume he was a random guy she decided to have sex with.
Well, she saw Black Seed and started running. That's what it said.
That's right.
I thought it was a memory though. Maybe I misread the scene, but I thought she was remembering back to when she had the encounter with the architect.
No, that was in her room.
I thought it was I thought she was having a flashback or a hallucination. I didn't know if it was literally or if it was happening or if she was just if I thought she was scarred or she was having hallucinations and seeing things that weren't really happening, but I didn't consider it being an actual Black Seed.
Yeah, I also thought it was a flashback, but maybe I don't know. I might have misread it.
Well, just keep in mind there's maybe something more than Sarsalis. A tall blue Gothic guardsman with blue tattoos that might be his skin spy too.
Hmm.
Might be whatever Sarsalis is.
Yeah, but I think I think it's fair to say that I think it's fair to conclude that Sarcellus is a skin spy at this point, isn't it? Like we have heard, I think it was the architect. He did refer to Sarcellus's face and sort of making it open, and I
And
think it's
if we remember, Acamian like was chasing that guy who was following him, and when he caught him, his face was different. That wasn't Sarsalis. That was somebody else. So Sarsalis and Skios and them are not unique. Who knows how many there are, but I think that was proof that there was at least one more, because Acamian reflected back on that after he had seen what they can do and was like, have I been being followed the whole time? And then he reflects on how all his like students died, and then he thinks about Esnet, who just like slept right outside of his camp and ran away because he didn't recognize her because he was too in his head from finally seeing the consult. So he just like walked right by Esnet, and she freaked out and ran away.
yeah. Asman makes a lot of decisions in this part that I don't know if I necessarily understood. So like first she goes to the market and she hooks up with this guy she's never seen. To first it seemed like she's doing it for money, but then like same thing that she did with the architect. She gets the money from the man, and then she just throws it away. Um, like why do you think she did that? Like why do you think she had the need to drag this guy into a dark alley and do stuff with him? Why did she why did she ask for the money when she didn't keep it afterwards?
I wasn't sure if that was just her going back to what I don't say she felt comfortable with, but going back to whatever she like that was her way of feeling wanted in her own twisted way, I guess. But she does a lot of things that I just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But this is her being her, or if there's something else to it. Very unpredictable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
she is confusing. And the reason why he wants to, I guess, is clear from Sarsalis, because like they have some kind of affinity for being where their architect was, because he's the guy that had the black seed, the other guy. So they have just an affection for their architect, and they just want to be as close to him as possible. I guess he's kind of their god.
Yeah,
In a
I don't know.
sense.
Like, I wondered if it was just like her trying to gain back some level of control over her own life again, because she has spent these past few months living with Gisellos and has become sort of dependent on him. Um,
Hmm.
so I wonder if it was like her way of showing she doesn't need anymore. She doesn't just do the things that he tells her to do. She can make her own decisions, even if for some reason she decides not to go to Akami immediately, which is another puzzling decision she makes.
She tells Sarsalis that it was a Camian, actually, when she goes back that night.
Oh yeah,
He's
because
like,
he asked
who
her,
did
right?
you sleep
Yeah.
with? And he's like, a Camian, even though it was a lie. And then he like almost beats her, but doesn't.
Which I also was very confused by. Um, like, first of all, why does he keep Esmenet around anyway? Um, and then, like, what does he actually want to do with her? Does like does he care about her, or like is he jealous of Akami? Like, is there a reason why the console does not want her to to reunite with a Kamian. Um,
I kind of took it as they're using her as a way to get to Akamian. Is like that's their doorway into maybe predicting what he may be doing next, or where he or a way to like the like she's like their go between. This where her purpose is, but
She could be a tool
hmm,
potentially, and if you could have a potential tool, you might as well keep it.
yeah, that's a great point, Katerina, about her feeling like she has control again. I think her feeling like she can um, I don't want to say how do I say this, that she can still seduce other men, or she can still get that reaction out, and kind of she can find her own way if she wanted to, I guess is the way to say it.
yeah. And I mean, she does decide to leave Cercellus eventually, and go see a Kamian. And then there's this whole scene where she's walking through the camp, and it's like almost bizarre. Like everyone's celebrating. There's men groping her, and she kind of has to like almost fight to get through the camp to where Akamian's settled. Um, and then she's observing all the men sitting at the campfire from the dark. And I really like that scene. Like it was it's very atmospheric. And it also felt like very vivid. Like when she's walking through the camp and everyone's just like grabbing at her. It was pretty intense.
I think they were celebrating because they're finally going to march, right? Is that why they were?
Yeah.
Because I think you have people who were ready for war who just sit around and wait. So I think they were kind of
It might have fell on some festival day too. Just
oh,
so happened to be some like the beginning of fall or something. I don't know exactly what time of year it was, but they like talked about a festival and how they were wearing like kind of special clothes that were supposed to see the sunset or something.
oh, that's right.
And then Kellis and Zenimis go and pee and laugh, and Kellis sees Essinet but doesn't say anything. Zenimis falls asleep at the campfire waiting for Akamian because Akamian got summoned by Confis to go see Skios for the first time. And when he seen Skios, he didn't like even mention that he knew what he was, but Skios like seen him and freaked out and broke the chains and started speaking in some weird tongue to him and tried to fight him. That's why I think that in Confis's heart of hearts, he knows that the mandate are right on what Skios is, but Xerius kind of plays it off like it's the Sishwarim. But I think Confis knows. He's seen the truth. I feel like it says that there's truth here today or something.
Yeah, I think Confus at least seemed wavering or undecided. But I think, but to be fair, in Xerius's defense, I don't think that concluding that the Kisharim are involved is it's not such a stupid inference to make. Because like we know that you like the other sorcerers, they can't see the mark of their magic. And I mean the Inrethi are getting ready to march into a war against the Gisharim and the Fanin. So it would make sense that they would have spies in
It's
the Nansur.
the logical assumption, I would say, but they don't see the past like Akamian sees the past, I guess. Nobody does. That's why I think most people there who know what happened blame this Ishwarim.
Yeah, I think it's a logical conclusion, but wrong one.
In regards to the skin spies, I wondered if it was the same person, or if there was multiples of the
Skin spies?
Mhm.
Well, they have to like take over the entire life of someone if they're gonna infiltrate. So they can't bounce from one to the other unless the other one becomes wasted.
Yeah, I think I mean you have Scales, which spends most of its time with Sirius, and then you have Cercellus, who like before coming to Moment was in Sumna working for Maidenhead. So I think it would be hard for them to be the same person if they have to be in multiple places and basically impersonate these people like 24/7. And like I think even like when Cercellus and the architect are talking about the other skin spy, like it's sort of implied that other skin spy is like it's not Cercellus, it's someone else.
And just what they are, we don't know yet. We're only one book deep.
Yeah, well, we know what they're not. They're not a product of sorcery. I think that's been established.
Unless it's the Shishwarim, which is
Um,
markless.
yeah, but I think we know the truth.
Akamian sure seems to know. He's the only one I would say in a position to. Just the fact that it flipped out when it seen Akamian and called him Mandati and tried to eat his face kind of signifies that it's an old enemy.
Yeah, and I mean, it does leave you wondering, like, who else is a skin spy? Like, who else have they captured, like, got hold of? Like, who else has been replaced by
Well, now
this?
you know Kellis is capable. He's like one of the only ones capable of seeing them because you know how Ikari found out by that weird glare Kellis had at him when he was giving him the thousand-eyed stare.
Yeah. Again, like, Zir is accidentally very competent.
It's true, but he still lost the political intrigue part. Confis is marching, they're getting nothing. Proteus and Nair seem to outsmart him. I think there was a
Well,
part it talked about like Goshen opening up. He had like two scrolls. Seemed like Goshen had the choice to unlock the red scroll or the red sealed scroll or the black sealed scroll, and one of them would have been for the Emperor and one of them would have been for Proteus. And it was up to him to decide who was telling the truth. I couldn't tell exactly because it did mention that there were two scrolls that he had. He like picked one and opened it after he heard all the debates.
yeah, that's I also wasn't sure, but that's also how I understood
It makes
that
sense for him
scene.
to keep the choice like open and give his trusted advisor the like you make the choice once you hear the debate who wins. Let's side with the winners.
Because
But
yeah, I mean they do.
he's not there, so he's got to trust somebody. But his
Yeah,
writing needed to be there, so maybe he needed the two contradictory scrolls.
I mean they did say that Gotian, the what's his name? Well, what's his title? The commander of the Shrine.
Grandmaster of the Shriel Knights.
Right, right. He's the Grandmaster. Like they did say that he was there to make the final decision. So it wouldn't make sense if Maitonet had already written down what he wanted them to do. Like it wouldn't have made sense for Gotian to judge anything, like or listen to the nobleman's arguments if there was already a decision made. So I think yeah, I think I understood it the same way you did, Daniel. But like I mean, it kind of leaves you wondering though, like if Callus hadn't intervened, would they would they have arrived at the same decision? Because at that point, it seemed like Gautier was leaning more towards having the emperor have his way.
And then Kellis made him realize that they give twice giving to the Emperor. They give someone they kind of despise as their leader, as well as all the land that they conquer, when they could just have someone they despise as their leader who doesn't want no land at all. And that sounds
Yeah,
like a better thing.
but it's kind of a false dilemma, isn't it? Like, they don't know anything about Nayor. Like, they don't have anyone to vouch for him, and they know that Confus is like, he's a great general. Like, everyone acknowledges that, even if they don't like him personally. And he defeated the Skilvendi at Kayuth, so he has the resume, and the Nensor are in Reethi, so in theory they should have the other Inrithi's best interest at heart. Which
Kellis somehow made him out to be a heathen too, even though he's part of them. It was a trick of truth, like the Dunyan like to play.
Yeah, though we know that Zarius has made a deal with the Phantom, so actually maybe having the the Skilvendi in this particular situation might be more trustworthy than the Emperor.
He certainly would, because we know his motivation has nothing to do with like any of it. He just wants to get there and kill one guy. That's all he wants to do.
It's a lot of work.
Just needs to kill the other thousands to get through to him.
And he's like already in his own mind like given up the holy war to the devil by bringing Kellis into it. He's acknowledged that the holy war is like seemingly gonna get taken. I feel like Akemi in one of the passages before the books talks about how like he came and just took the whole war from them. Nobody was expecting it because it was so many men with so many like hopes and dreams, and then one person stepped forward and just somehow commandeered it all.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, if you were wondering at the beginning what holy war Okamian is writing about, I think it's pretty clear at this point that he's writing about the war that is about to happen. That all the epigraphs, the whole history, he's writing about something that we haven't actually experienced yet. And I don't. It might be interesting to go back and reread those epigraphs. It might give you maybe some little hints about what's going to happen.
Direction. Just
yeah,
in
but
general.
but I mean they are kind of ambiguous. Like, it's not like they're gonna spoil the whole whole trilogy for you.
I kind of didn't
Definitely
like that
not.
though. Yeah, kind of, because you know that he's going to survive for at least a while. He's a terrible spy, isn't he?
It's true. Every instance, he just is terrible in it. He thinks he's doing the right thing, in the immediate next paragraph, he's like, "Oh man, it was a mistake."
Yeah,
He
I
should just give up being a spy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Grandmaster of the Scarlet Spires seems to hold him in quite high esteem, at least initially, when he comes to visit him to the what's his name, Zynemus's camp. But that was also a pretty wild encounter.
I kind of thought that was just based on reputation or just kind of word of mouth and not actually what he's done. Is that unfair to say? That he just kind of he's made a name for himself, but...
Yeah, the Mandate themselves are the most feared wizards in the whole place. He talks about how he could like murder dragons. Never seen dragons yet, but Akamian could murder all of the dragons, he says. How he could just bring so much terror to these people, and we've seen him go against, I guess, the consult, and he had him cowering real quick till he got his face tentacles on him.
Yeah, we don't see Kamian do a lot of magic in this book. But I think there was also the part where oh god, what's his name? Eliazarius? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like there's too many E's and A's in that name. Like Eliazarius also seems to think that Akamian murdered the Geshruni, the one of the slave guard. Yeah, I think he was a slave, wasn't he? The one that Akamian tried to recruit in like one of the first chapters. So Elazarius seems to think that Akamian did that, and also on top of that, he like took his face.
So they look in the records and find one more instance where it had happened before that, I guess. But the body was too messed up for them to know who it was.
Yeah, but I mean, the implication from that being that there may be another spy among the Scarlet Spires or in Carathusil, right?
Yeah. And to them, it's the Sishwaran, they think, or the mandate. They think it's the mandate, but the Kamian knows it wasn't him. So, for all of these people, you can understand why they think it is who they think with their, like, biased narratives. They only get to see through their eyes, whereas we get to see through all the different eyes, so we get a better feel of who's being played and who's not. As long as we can trust the people's whose eyes we get to see the world through.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like about the characters in this book. That like they're all pretty, like most of them are pretty intelligent, and they arrive at logical conclusions. But then because they lack certain information, the conclusions they make are just wrong. And we know that because we get to see we know more of the circumstances that surround them than they themselves, because we get to see them from other people's points of views. But they're not stupid people. They're just lacking information, or they're biased in some other ways. But they're all like, they're not dumb. Like, they're generally pretty smart people, including Eliazarus.
And yet they're still all almost like Lewis to Kellis. That's what he says, anyways. According to him, they're all so much like Lewis.
True.
And they talk about like Janan, how they play Janan, and it's like it's pretty much like the exact game that Kellis like really plays. They play it in like mock, like to make fun of each other and to one up each other in small ways, whereas Kellis is just playing to one up them all at once. And you see him being like the pious guy, like people lean down to beg to him. He's like, "Oh no, don't beg to me. Get up, get up." So
I
he's
hate
like
it.
trying to appear like he's humble, like he's nothing, unless he has to say something profound, and then he obviously does. So everyone's starting to like see more in him than he is, just like Serway does. He magically got her pregnant, and he knows all the words she says, and he's just a walking god, and no one else sees it yet. She's the most pliable mind that he's encountered, it seems like. Lewis was pretty pliable. Serway was really broken when he came.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me wonder, like, is it because she's so simple? Let's put it that way, or is it because she wants to be played? Like, it's something that she like herself encourages or opens up to. It does seem like she wants to be understood by someone. She wants to have someone who seems to care about her and for her. Um, and Kellis does that for her, or at least he pretends to do that for her. So I wonder if like is it just that she's so stupid or so easy for him to work, or is it that she's like willingly giving herself to him? Which also leads me to the scene where like he finally agrees to sleep with Sir Wei, which is something that she's wanted a long time. He's resisted until now, and then finally he succumbs. And I wasn't really sure. Like I wanted to know what you thought. Like why did he do it, and why was it at that particular moment? Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't really sure what triggered that.
It's like her position between the face Kellis showed her, which is like the carrying god that is telling her she needs to suffer for some reason, against like the complete barbarian that Nair is, like polar opposites. And she loves one while gets abused by the other. When we know what Kellis is, he's technically abusing her too. He's just like using love to abuse her, probably. And why, we don't know yet. But for Kellis, everything's a tool. His breath, his words, his hunch, his gait when he walks, every single thing he does is somehow calculated towards something.
Yeah, I kind of took that as that's why he gave in, is because there was a reason. He felt like he had to do it at that moment, or um, she needed it to happen for she needed it to happen so he could do what he needed to, or so he could have the right, um, I want to say influence, or the kind of it was just because he does see her as a tool. Um, that's just what he needed to do to keep her a tool, I guess we could say. Is the way I kind of took it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the ways that one of the ways that she is a tool is he uses her to torture Naor. So I wonder if
Hmm.
like that also had anything to do with it.
Well,
If
Nair
this,
immediately was like super mad and like came out of the place with like almost naked with a sword. And he saw Kellis and was like, "My prize." So maybe it's a game Kellis is playing. Kellis
Hmm.
only plays games. That's what Nair says. They only play games. And since Nair is like un uncontrollable to Kellis because of what how Moingus broke him, he needs to find another way. So he's looking for his tools that he can use. And maybe that's why Sarway even got to live in the first place when Nair was like, leave her behind. And Kellis was like, no, I need her.
Hmm.
Dunyan don't need anyone unless they're tools for abusing other people at some point.
yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, Naor does, yeah, like he draws out the sword, but he doesn't actually do anything. Like he doesn't go and try to kill Callus or Sirway. So I guess Callus is doing something right, where he has somehow Naor figured out in ways that are not necessarily comprehensible to me yet.
Or he's just planting seeds for later that could be usable. Who knows how far ahead he sees right now. But towards the end of the book, he did like finally say he was stepping onto conditioned ground, like he sees a path now by being like the humble guy who hears God's voice. instead of being like the cocky, arrogant, I am the prophet, everyone listen to me, he needs to like slowly turn everyone. Which Zenimus loves him now, and Camion seems to love him now. Saraway loves him now. Proyas seems pretty smitten.
Yeah, I mean, like Akamian agrees to teach Callus the gnosis, and then
Not the
when
gnosis,
he
just school so
oh
far.
right, you're right. Well, yeah, he agrees to be his teacher and teach him about the three C's, and also when he's supposed to make a report to the mandate, he decides not to mention Callus, or he decides not to make that call at all because he doesn't want them to get too anxious about the Anarisarimber showing up to the Holy War, because
Yeah,
they all know the prophecy.
I don't know if he thinks they'll just kill him, so he like maybe the prophecy won't be true, or if they'll just try to get him and torture him to make him like their tool. Everyone's trying to make everyone their tools. This book also got me thinking, like, what do you think about the existence of God in Irwa? Does either of you have an opinion on the existence of God in Irwa? In other books, like, there are gods and they walk the earth, and gods make pawns of people. And this has obviously religions and prophecies.
Yeah, I think the first time I read this book, at least, I I didn't think that any of the gods. I just assumed that none of the gods were real. I guess maybe part of it is that like you have these like different religions and different people believe different things. So it just made me think like, well, if they're all they don't really agree. Like everyone thinks believes in different things, so maybe just none of it is real. Because like how could they all be true? But then I think like reading further into the series, I'm not so sure anymore. Because like everyone does seem to believe that gods or a god does like even a Kamian acknowledges some sort of existence of a god, maybe not as like a person, but at least some entity or concept. Um but I'm very confused about the religion in these books. I haven't really figured it out yet. I'll be very open about that.
Yeah, very complex.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully it'll make more sense later.
Things can appear complex until they're illuminated, and then
Yeah,
they're not.
it's
They're not
it's
really
very
anything.
mysterious. And then I mean you have the god, and then the gods, and then you have the no god, and I'm like,
Yeah, the dead god, the 100 gods. Henry Sejanus, the philosopher, who says that there's just no gods.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then you have one prophet. You have the latter prophet. Then you have Fane, the other prophet, and like one of them says the other's completely false, and got the religion wrong, and
But there was a
it's a
dream, a weird prophecy. Prophecies seem strange in a soulless, godless universe, kind of.
yeah, but we don't know if it's true, so
It's true. Also, I think in the prophecy, like the moment Kilmomus dies, like the light twinkles out. There's like a bright light from the sun that like flashes, and the light it all goes dark. That's in Akamian's last dream of that, since they're getting more intense. He sees that. Might just be a something that Sarsalis. It was no, not Sarsalis. What's his name? The 1,000-year-old mandate schoolman.
oh, Siswatha.
Siswatha. Maybe Seswatha sees it since his best friend died just right then. He sees the light blink out, but that also means that like the no god had just like taken over all light from the outside, as they call it, whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever that is, because I still don't know what that is. The whole the whole concept of the outside's not really, it's not very clear to me. I think in Nayor he refers to that in one of these chapters when he talks about like what the Skilvendi believed, and he said something like there's like a world outside of this world, and that's kind of the opposite of the world that the Skilvendi and the other people inhabit. And like there when there's a day, it's night in our world, and you can sort of see the light shining through the stars into our world. It's very I don't really know what to think of that.
I think I remember that part when he's like talking about the stars that he sees and what they are, but I can't remember exactly what he says either. He does believe in a dead god though, and they were on the side of the no god in the first apocalypse apparently. So
I kind of took it as the like as far as the gods go. I kind of feel like the gods are on vacation somewhere. They're not present, or they've kind of left this world to people to their own devices and kind of just letting things happen. So
yeah, and all gods in books, there's like levels of control, right? Like how much, if the god can like have divine intervention in people, or what kind of powers they get to have. So if they're real in this, who knows what kind of powers they get to have?
Yeah,
In
there is.
something like Malazan, they have lots of strange powers. Gods are crazy in Malazan, for sure,
Yeah,
and
there's
prevalent.
definitely more prevalent in this book. But I mean, there is one scene in one of the early chapters with Enra when he's in a temple, and he's praying to one of the goddesses. Like he prays for a sign from her, and then the next thing that happens is the consult shows up with the Cicelis and the Synthes, and it kind of made me wonder if there is any connection. Um, but I don't know.
Also, you got to remember where Near found Kellis. Like, just how much coincidence is possible. It's debatable.
Yeah.
Even,
very cryptic.
even to me, it's really debatable. But, like,
Maybe on your fourth read through,
it's
you
true.
might,
I think I
you
would need to
might.
do it, like, faster without so many years in between. Once the
Mm.
years go in between, it becomes, like, almost the same experience. I just have more life to reflect on all the stuff I read, so it just takes me longer to read it, maybe. As a kid, I could only go so deep when this book tries to go really deep. But as I grow up and have lots of good experiences and bad experiences, I can go deeper. People talk about this book being like really dense and other fantasy books being really dense, but I think that this book is another direction from just dense. It's like it's 4D. If dense is just 3D, then this is like 4D. It's dense and deep or something. I've read other books that people consider dense, and they didn't have like as much intertwined story or so much times of self-reflection that caused me to self-reflect myself.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, but I also think that you can read this book superficially and still enjoy it for the good story that it is, and like the great characters that it has. Like there's always more to dig into, but even on the surface, there's still a lot to enjoy, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. The story itself is one of the craziest stories I ever read, even just the first time. You're gonna get there soon, Katerina, to where what people say this is like the most grim dark series ever, and at points it's hard to see where, but at points you definitely see where.
Yeah, I
And
admit
good luck.
I've been making very slow progress. It turns out it's pretty hard to read two Bakker books at the same time,
Yeah.
but I will get there eventually. Um,
Oh,
but
let's see.
maybe we can just quickly go back to Esminette, because it was still
Yeah,
like the very ending of her section that I think really talked through.
Yeah.
So we I think we sort of left her where she's observing the camp from like a hiding place. The camp where like Proas and Zynemus are sitting and sort of celebrating the fact that the Holy War is going to march finally. And I don't know, she has this like moment where she's thinking like that she could never really, even if Akamin was there, she could never probably like find the courage to go out and walk up to him, because like how could she, like a prostitute, join or sit next to the great men like Proyas or I don't know, Compass, or who are like, Nayor, like all these like people who are so important. Like how could she ever compare to them? Like how would they ever, why would they ever want to keep her as company? um and I mean, she makes a lot of strange decisions in this book, but it also like, I think at the end of the day, she is very relatable in that, like, she is someone who's like, she doesn't have much and she kind of comes from nothing, and she has very low esteem because of that, and because of the fact like she is a woman in a world that does not think much of her. So I really like that moment. And then I think she falls asleep, and then Sir Celis wakes her up, and he, like, at first it seems he's going to want to take her back to his encampment, but then like for some reason he decides to just let her go, which I also don't quite understand that decision. But she has this sort of like a breakdown where she's, after she, oh no, then she stays there and she's waiting for a Kamian, and then a Kamian shows up, but he doesn't see her because he's so like freaked out by the fact he just saw a console spy, and like, and she doesn't get that he's freaking out, so she just thinks that he's ignoring her deliberately, um and doesn't want to have anything to do with her. And she has this sort of like like a small breakdown where she's like, everything, all these like scenarios that which she was building up in her head, and how she was imagining like their reunification, like how sweet and how amazing it would be, it's just completely um completely falls apart. But then she has this breakdown and she picks herself up and she gives herself this like pep talk, and I really loved the quote, what she thinks about, like what she the memory she has, or like something that like one of the older prostitutes told her about like why it's better to be a prostitute in this world than to be just another like wife or concubine. And she says, that's why we're more than concubines, more than priestesses, more than wives, more even than some queens. We may be oppressed, but remember, always remember, sweet girl, we're never owned. We spit their seed back at them. We never bear its weight. And I love that section, and I love that's how she like exits the book. That she sort of, even though, despite all the like terrible things that happened to her, like the fact, like Kami and abandoning her, and then the architect sort of like assaulting her essentially, and her getting stoned, and then having this weird relationship with Gisela's. Like at the end, she's like, "No, like I'm free. I'm my own woman, and I can take care of myself, even though like my life is hard." I really love that. I really love that's how she ends in this book.
Yeah, her belief that she is more is pretty powerful. It's like when she is taking in all the guys, she's like trying to vicariously live through them and like find out the politics and trying to like understand the outside world because she took that little philosophy into like her whole life, sort of. Her belief that she is more is like a big part of Essenet's like entire character, I think. She forgets it because of her position, but then she believes it, and other people around her like even kind of believe it. Like I said, like the architect or whatever tells Sarsalis to let her live because she's like keeping secrets from him, so she's like a, deeper than people anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, I love that she has this like back and forth where she'll think of herself as someone important, someone competent, someone who can play a role in the grand scheme of things. But then she has also these other moments where um she thinks to herself that she's nothing. She doesn't mean anything to anyone. You know what? Like she's just completely insignificant. Um and I mean that like it feels very real. Like I think for a person to like feel confident in one moment and then just com- have like completely lose your sense of self-worth in another instant.
Yeah, there's
She's
a
a great
lot
character.
of like positive and negative personality traits that are on display in these characters. And we read about it for a lot of books and their personalities and problems and good qualities and bad qualities will all be tried and changed or hardened. So that's why fantasy books are so good. When they're long series, is we get to see so much change. And where our Scott Baker goes so deep into all the character psyches, we get to share their struggles without having to live it. If that makes sense. I like to try
Yeah.
to learn from other people's experience without having to go into the mud myself. And this book helps me go into a lot of muddy thoughts.
I certainly would not want to go through most of the things that the people in this book go through. Or even meet most of these. Like, I mean, as I said, I love Neor. He's a wonderful character, but I would never ever want to meet him in real life. Like, if I saw him like a mile away, I'd run away. He's
When it's Kellis that you should probably run the furthest away from.
true.
Yeah, that's
Very
true.
true.
Yeah, it's very true. Well, good first start for the first book. Uh, when the first time I read it, I had a totally different view on it. I think the second time is I missed a lot. I think the first time, so it's been great to talk to you both about it in the reread.
Like Katerina was saying, you read it the first time and you got a story, but then the second time you just get a more layered story. And it can be enjoyed as just a one layered story. The people in it do stuff and you get to know them and they do cool stuff, but all the stuff in the background can kind of remain obscure. Maybe even at the end of all of it, it remains semi obscure. That's what gives all of us Baker fans so much to talk about still. If everything's all nice and tidy and tied up, then there's a lot less to speculate on. And for a fan base, I think speculation is a good thing, kind of.
Yeah. It leads to good conversations and theories and kind of gets your brain working when you're not reading the book. Time to reflect on it.
Yeah, and I think there are definitely there are definitely things that like the way you read them will depend on like your own experiences or your own worldviews. So yeah, I think this series can definitely encourage a lot of discussions.
I think we proved that. Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, do you want to make some predictions about what's going to happen in the next book, Steve?
I think the Holy War is going to fail. That's my prediction.
Define fail.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh yeah, that's good. I think everything's all the plans that are being made and all the different maneuvering that's happening and politicking. I think all of it's going to be for nothing. That it's all going to fall apart.
I'm trying to keep my poker face, but I feel like I'm failing.
That's my prediction.
I'm debating the validity of your words. This book isn't all black and white, so it's hard to say like if something definitely is or isn't anything
Yeah, I think
until it gets confirmed.
it's true. I mean, there are different parties that want different things from the Holy War. So failure of the Holy War might mean different things to different people who are involved.
I would almost certainly say that the Holy War has to succeed for someone. Like someone, there has to be winners and losers from everything. Like every war causes some winners and losers, even if the clearness of them aren't for certain yet.
Well, let me put it this way: I think Callus was going to be surprised. I think it's not going to work out the way he thinks it will, or he wants it to. But I think he'll be, I don't want to say put in his place, or I think he will fail in some way.
I'm not saying anything.
That's my prediction.
I'm excited for you to get to the second book. There's a lot of action in it. A lot of fun stuff that happens in book 2. It's most people's favorite, for sure. Like, probably 80% of people like book 2 more than the rest.
Yeah, well, book Darkness is still my favorite, but we'll see. We'll see if it changes on the reread of Warrior Prophet.
Awesome. We'll find out next week. We'll start to find out anyway.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Oh,
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say if since we talked about the skin spies and how that maybe there could be more than Cercellus and Scaeus, I was wondering if you might want to make a non-educated guess. Or do you even think if there's anyone else who's a skin spy?
I don't know. I didn't really thought about it until this discussion, to be honest. I didn't really put too much thought into that one.
That's fine. I mean, just keep an eye out.
I'm guessing there'll be more than more than you would first think there would be. I guess you could say. Just a lot of them.
I'm not saying anything.
Maybe even characters that we've been following are skin spies.
Possibly.
I don't know.
This book is crazy.
Yeah. Maybe we've been looking through the eyes of a skin spy and just didn't know it.
That's a thought.
We got to look through Sarsalus's eyes once, and it was like a pretty non-human foreign place.
Yeah.
That is true.
That is true. Yeah. That is true.
That was
Just like
pretty jarring.
in Sarsalus's eyes and Kellis's eyes, they both seem inhuman, which is weird. Kellis is evolved from humans, but just 2,000 years removed in some directions. That's why I can find it believable that he could catch an arrow out of the air, or he could hold a person over a precipice with his one arm, even though he's just as big as him, because 2,000 years of mutating humans for just intellect and superiority could make some pretty strange things, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it does make more sense with that knowledge. Though I don't think that's necessarily knowledge you possess, or I don't think that's entirely clear even after you finish the first book. So I did find it a bit, I don't know, irritating when I first read it. But in retrospect, yes, it's justifiable. And
In
it's
the
kind
first
of cool, so
in the first book, it talks about how they only care about intellect and how they're kind of just specifically bred for intellect and dominating what comes before whatever that is. Period. They consider like the absolute to be what they strive for, which is just the beginning of where things come from, wherever that is. If they if they can get that deep, then they can precede all things. And then Kellis kind of started to go pretty deep when he was in that trance. Like that was his first time, I think, understanding it at 11 years old, and then he had another 20 something years since then to hone whatever that is. Well, his father like learned it all and then left, and now he's had 30 years and like playing around with little baby humans.
yeah, I guess when I first read the book, and like yeah, as you say, they do mention that the Dunyan breed for intellect and for skill. I guess I just didn't think they would take it to that extreme. But I guess the joke wasn't me.
You're still yet to see the extremes, though I think you
Yeah.
know when you will. There's people in the books you're reading that are going to discover some extremes soon. It's going to be good. Just, you got to get back there, or we got to get through all these books so we can all be on that part. Whatever we decide to do, I guess.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. So I know. Thanks again for Katerina. Thanks for staying up late with us. I know it's late for you, so
No
thanks for hanging
worries.
out with
So,
us.
I mean, what wouldn't I sacrifice to have an opportunity to talk about this book, right?
Yeah.
The pleasure is mine.
Okay. Awesome. Daniel, it's always great to chat with you.
Yep, you guys too. It's been really fun to have people to talk about this first book with.
Do you feel
People who've
like
only read the first book and people who have only read the first series and a little more, so we have a good mixture.
yeah? Yeah, I think so. So when you hear me talk about the book or the series, do you feel like Kellis because you know so much?
I definitely understand the condition ground Baker has laid out more than you.
Yeah.
I think, judging by this first book, it really doesn't even seem like that epic of fantasy. It seems like a retelling of the Crusades with a fantastical element.
Yeah, I mean, I would take even just the retelling, but yeah, it does get more magical, more epic as you go on.
You like hear brief descriptions of the epicness, like when, like I said, Acadian was like thinking about how he was in that same town 1,000 years ago, and just all of the changes that history has made, but you don't you get all these characters and just their simple little holy war, not the no god Mogfaro or any of the stuff that High King Kilmomus had a, what's his name, Kilmomus? The 1,000-year-old king.
Yeah, I think he's Kalmumis. Yeah,
The one
should
that
be.
Seswatha watched die. He was fighting against Mogfaro, the whirlwind, against the shrink, against the no god. That's like, I don't know if the no god's real god's probably real-ish, or it's all just made up. There is no first apocalypse. Or Seswatha lied.
I won't get into any further speculation.
Yeah, it's human nature to lie a little bit, right? That's why all these characters in this are kind of unreliable narrators. They only have their one viewpoint of the world. So it skews them into thinking that the Sichuan did things, or that it's this person's fault or that person's fault, when they just don't see the whole picture.
Find out. You're killing me. Okay. So Katerina, if people want to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
If you want to talk to me, I think the page chewing forum would be the best place to find me, especially to talk about these books. But I'm also on Instagram at the Errant.
Nice. And Daniel, where's the best place to find you?
Either the page chewing forum or just the comments in these videos. I'd assume I'll see eventually, hopefully.
Yeah.
So you could just comment there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks to both of you. I'm looking forward to next week. Start book 2.
Yep.
Sounds
See you
good to
next
me.
week.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.